He was just driving home after a long training session when he spotted something that made his heart stop. A small child, no older than 2 years old, wandering dangerously close to the busy Boulder highway in Las Vegas. Manny Pacquiao, the boxing legend, known for his lightning-fast punches, found himself frozen for a split second before his instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, he pulled over, ignoring the honking cars behind him. What he discovered that day would change not just his life, but the lives of many others in ways no one could have predicted. It was a moment that would test not only his courage, but also his humanity. The sun was beating down mercilessly on the Las Vegas pavement that afternoon, turning the Boulder highway into a shimmering ribbon of heat. Manny Pacquiao had just finished an intense training session, preparing for what many speculated might be one of his final professional fights. His muscles ached, but his mind was clear as he drove along the familiar route back to his temporary residence. The radio played softly in the background, barely audible over the sound of the air conditioning working overtime. He was thinking about his family back in the Philippines, wondering what they might be doing at that moment, when something caught his eye, a splash of bright color where it shouldn't be, far too close to the dangerous highway. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. Maybe it was just a bag of trash that someone had carelessly thrown out, or perhaps an animal that had wandered too far from home. But as he drew closer, the unmistakable shape of a small child came into focus, tottering dangerously close to the road where cars whizzed by at alarming speeds. The toddler, dressed in a red t-shirt and tiny denim shorts, couldn't have been more than 2 years old. Manny's heart nearly stopped. Without thinking twice, he swerved toward the shoulder of the road, his tires screeching in protest. Several cars honked angrily behind him, but he paid them no mind. In that moment, nothing mattered except reaching that child before tragedy struck. He flung open his car door and sprinted toward the toddler, who seemed oblivious to the danger just feet away. Time seemed to slow down as Manny closed the distance between them, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of parents or guardians. There was no one, just an apartment complex about 100 yards away, across an empty lot. How had such a young child wandered so far alone? The toddler turned to look at him with wide, curious eyes that showed no fear, just innocent wonder at the stranger running toward him. Manny's mind raced with questions. Where were this child's parents? How long had the little one been out here alone in the scorching heat? And most importantly, what would have happened if he hadn't driven by at that exact moment? Manny reached the child just as a truck roared past, sending a gust of hot air and dust over them both. The toddler's curly hair ruffled in the wind, but the child remained remarkably calm, almost as if expecting Manny to show up. With gentle hands, the boxer scooped up the small child, who felt alarmingly warm to the touch, clear signs of too much time in the Nevada sun. "Hey there, little one," Manny said softly, his Filipino accent thickening with emotion. "Where's your mommy and daddy?" The child merely blinked in response, then reached out to touch Manny's face with tiny fingers. Something about the innocent gesture made Manny's chest tighten. He had children of his own, and the thought of any of them in such a dangerous situation made his blood run cold. He knew he needed to act quickly to find this child's family. Holding the toddler securely against his chest, Manny pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered promptly, and Manny explained the situation, his words tumbling out in a rush of concern. "I found a small child wandering alone near Boulder Highway," he said, giving his exact location. "The child appears to be around 2 years old, no visible injuries, but has been in the sun for who knows how long." The dispatcher assured him that police and child services would be there shortly, and advised him to find shade and give the child water if possible. Manny glanced at the apartment complex in the distance, wondering if that's where the toddler had come from. Were there frantic parents searching right now, living through every parent's worst nightmare? Or was there a more troubling explanation for why this child was alone? While waiting for the authorities to arrive, Manny retrieved a bottle of water from his car and carefully helped the toddler drink small sips. The child seemed thirsty, confirming Manny's fears about dehydration. He sat on the hood of his car, creating shade with his body to protect the little one from the relentless sun. People drove by, some slowing down to stare at the famous boxer sitting by the roadside with a child. A few even pulled over to ask if he needed help, but Manny assured them that emergency services were on the way. The toddler had begun to grow restless in his arms, occasionally calling out what sounded like "mama," the first word Manny had heard from the child. Each time, Manny would gently bounce the child on his knee and promise, "We're going to find your mama, don't worry." But privately, his concern was growing. In his experience, when a child this young was found alone, the circumstances were rarely good. The sound of sirens grew louder, and within minutes, police cars and an ambulance pulled up beside them. The officers recognized Manny immediately, but maintained their professionalism as they approached. "Mr. Pacquiao, thank you for calling this in," said the first officer to reach them, a woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. A paramedic quickly took the child from Manny's arms to check for signs of dehydration or injury. Manny explained exactly how he had found the toddler, pointing to the spot near the highway where the child had been wandering. "I was just driving by," he said, downplaying his role. "Anyone would have done the same." The female officer shook her head. "Not everyone would have noticed, sir. And not everyone would have stopped. This child is very lucky that you came along when you did." "We'll need to file a report," the officer explained. "This is a case of child endangerment, possibly abandonment." The words hit Manny hard. He couldn't imagine any parent willingly abandoning their child, especially in such a dangerous location. There had to be another explanation. Perhaps the toddler had slipped out while a parent was sleeping, or maybe there was a medical emergency. Despite his optimistic nature, though, Manny couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong about the situation. The toddler was now sitting in the back of the ambulance, clutching a stuffed animal that one of the paramedics had given him, looking small and vulnerable under the bright lights. After about an hour of door-knocking and questioning residents, one of the officers returned with a lead. A tenant had reported hearing a child crying early that morning, followed by the sound of screeching tires. Another mentioned seeing an unfamiliar car parked briefly near the complex around dawn. The pieces were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was heartbreaking. "We suspect the child may have been deliberately abandoned," the female officer told Manny quietly, making sure the toddler couldn't hear. "We're checking security cameras in the area, but it looks like someone may have dropped this little one off and driven away." Manny felt a surge of anger. How could anyone do such a thing to an innocent child? The Nevada heat could be deadly, especially for someone so young and vulnerable. If he hadn't driven by when he did, if the toddler had wandered just a few feet closer to the highway, he couldn't bear to finish the thought. Child services arrived soon after, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and weary eyes who introduced herself as Diane. She approached the toddler with practiced gentleness, speaking in soft, soothing tones. To everyone's surprise, the child reached for her without hesitation, perhaps responding to her maternal energy. "We'll take good care of this little one," Diane assured Manny, noticing his concerned expression. "We'll try to locate the parents, but in the meantime, the child will be placed in emergency foster care." Manny nodded, but found himself reluctant to leave. Something about this child's innocent trust, the way those small fingers had touched his face, it had awakened a protective instinct in him that went beyond the initial rescue. "Is there any way I can follow up on what happens?" he asked Diane. "I'd like to know that the child is going to be okay." Diane studied him for a moment, then handed him her card. "Call me tomorrow," she said simply. Neither of them realized then just how important that card would become. The news of Manny Pacquiao's roadside rescue spread quickly through Las Vegas, then exploded across national and international media. By nightfall, the story had gone viral, with headlines praising the boxing champion's quick thinking and compassion. Manny, however, paid little attention to the publicity. Back at his temporary home, he couldn't get the image of the abandoned toddler out of his mind. He found himself checking his phone repeatedly, hoping for updates from the police or child services, even though he knew it was too soon. His wife, Jinky, called from the Philippines after seeing the news, her voice filled with pride and concern. "That poor baby," she said. "Thank God you were there." Manny agreed, but privately wondered about the broader implications. How many other children were in similar situations, with no famous person happening by to rescue them? The thought troubled his sleep that night. The next morning, Manny canceled his training session, something he rarely did, and called the number on Diane's card. The child services worker sounded surprised but pleased to hear from him. "The little boy is doing well physically," she told him. "No serious dehydration or injuries, thankfully." It was the first confirmation Manny had that the child was a boy. "We're still trying to identify him," Diane continued. "No missing child reports match his description, and we've found no identification left with him." The implication was clear. Whoever had abandoned the boy had planned carefully to remain anonymous. "Would it be possible for me to visit him?" Manny asked, surprising even himself with the request. There was a pause on the line before Diane responded. "That's unusual, Mr. Pacquiao, but given the circumstances, yes, I think we can arrange that. It might actually help our investigation if the media attention brings forward someone who recognizes him." Manny arrived without entourage or fanfare, determined to keep this visit personal rather than public. The foster mother, a kind-faced woman named Gloria, welcomed him warmly but with clear protective boundaries around her temporary charge. "He's been through enough already," she explained as she led Manny to the living room where the toddler was playing with colorful blocks on the carpet. The boy looked up as they entered, and Manny was relieved to see color in his cheeks and brightness in his eyes, a stark contrast to the dazed, sunburned child he'd found by the highway. For a moment, the toddler just stared at Manny, head tilted as if trying to place him. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled and held up a block in offering. "I think he remembers you," Gloria said softly. Diane arrived shortly after, carrying a folder thick with documents. She watched with interest as Manny sat on the floor, building a simple tower with the boy, who giggled delightedly each time it toppled over. "We've been calling him Mikey for now," Diane explained, "just until we learn his real name." She hesitated, then continued. "The police found something from the security cameras." She showed Manny a grainy image of a car parked near the apartment complex, timestamp showing 5:17 a.m. The driver's face wasn't visible, but there was a clear shot of a woman emerging from the passenger side, carrying what appeared to be the toddler. "This was the drop-off," Diane said. 17 minutes later, the car drives away, without the child. Manny felt that surge of anger return, stronger now that he'd spent time with the boy, seen his innocent joy and trust. "Who would do this?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. But Diane's expression had shifted to one of careful neutrality, the look of someone with difficult news to share. "There's more," she said, lowering her voice so the child couldn't hear. "We found a note tucked into his diaper. It was missed during the initial examination." She passed Manny a photocopy of a handwritten letter, protected in a plastic sleeve. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Please help my son. His name is Miguel. His father will kill us both if he finds us. I can't protect him anymore. Please find him a safe home where his father can never reach him." Manny read it twice, his heart sinking with each word. This wasn't a case of callous abandonment, it was the last desperate act of a mother trying to save her child from abuse. The highway location suddenly made terrible sense. She had chosen somewhere the boy would be found quickly, by people with no connection to his father. The revelation about Miguel's circumstances changed everything. What had seemed like a simple case of child abandonment was now revealed to be something far more complex and heartbreaking. Diane explained that they were working with police to try to identify and locate the mother, both to ensure her safety and to get more information about the threatening father. "The problem is," she said, "without knowing the mother's identity, or the father's, we can't determine if the threat is real, or perhaps a symptom of mental health issues." Manny nodded, understanding the delicate balance the authorities had to maintain. The child services system was designed to reunite families when possible, but in cases like this, reunification might put the child at risk. Miguel, oblivious to the adult's serious conversation, had moved on to a picture book, babbling happily to himself as he turned the colorful pages. Gloria brought them coffee as they continued their discussion. "What happens to him now?" Manny asked, watching Miguel play. Diane sighed, the weight of too many similar cases evident in her expression. "He'll remain in emergency foster care while we investigate. If we can't locate either parent within a certain time frame, or if we determine that returning to them isn't in his best interest, he'll become eligible for permanent placement, either long-term foster care or adoption." The word adoption hung in the air between them. Manny thought of his own children, of the security and love they enjoyed, and of this little boy whose future was so uncertain. "How long does that process take?" he asked. Diane's answer was honest but disheartening. "It can take months, sometimes years. The system is overloaded, and cases with complications like Miguel's often get bogged down in legal proceedings." Without hesitation, Manny complied, lifting the boy into a gentle embrace. Miguel immediately rested his head on Manny's shoulder, a gesture of such innocent trust that everyone in the room felt its impact. "He doesn't do that with everyone," Gloria remarked quietly. "He's been cautious with strangers since he arrived." Manny held the boy a moment longer before carefully handing him back to Gloria. Outside in his car, he sat for several minutes before starting the engine, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't anticipated when he'd made this visit. He had come to check on a child he'd rescued, a good deed, closure on an unusual incident. He was leaving with something else entirely, a connection, and the beginning of what felt like responsibility. He pulled out his phone and called Jinky. There was something important they needed to discuss. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and serious conversations. Manny's training took a back seat as he and Jinky, who had flown in from the Philippines overnight after their phone call, navigated the complexities of the child welfare system. They met with lawyers who specialized in adoption and family law, consulted with Diane and her supervisors at Child Services, and spent hours talking through what they were considering. The media had gotten wind of Manny's continued involvement with the child he'd rescued, and speculation was running wild. Some reports painted him as a hero twice over, while others questioned his motives or suggested it was all a publicity stunt. Manny ignored the noise, focused entirely on what was best for Miguel and what was right for his own family. Jinky had been hesitant at first, concerned about the implications of bringing another child into their already busy lives. But after meeting Miguel, something shifted in her perspective. "There's a reason you were the one who found him," she told Manny as they drove back from another visit to the foster home. "Of all the people who could have driven down that highway at that moment, it was you." Manny wasn't sure if he believed in that kind of destiny. but he couldn't deny the powerful pull he felt toward helping this child. Their own children, consulted via video calls, had shown surprising enthusiasm for the possibility of a new brother. "It's like God dropped him right in front of you, Dad," their eldest had said, with the simple clarity of youth. The legal path forward wasn't clear yet, but their family decision was solidifying with each passing day. Meanwhile, the police investigation had made progress. The car seen in the security footage had been identified as a rental, paid for with cash and a fake ID. The woman who had left Miguel had covered her tracks well, suggesting a level of planning that came from genuine fear. Facial recognition software had yielded no matches in any database, leading investigators to speculate that she might be undocumented or living under an assumed identity. Each dead end in the search for Miguel's parents only reinforced the reality that the boy might never be reunited with his birth family. A judge had scheduled a hearing to determine his legal status, a first step toward possible permanent placement. As the date approached, Manny and Jinky made a decision that would not only change their lives, but would soon make headlines around the world. On the morning of the hearing, Manny and Jinky arrived at the courthouse to find a small crowd of reporters waiting. Word had somehow leaked about their intentions. They hurried inside, where they met with their lawyer and Diane. Miguel was brought in by Gloria, dressed in new clothes that Jinky had bought for him. The little boy's face lit up when he saw Manny and Jinky, and he squirmed in Gloria's arms until she set him down. Without hesitation, he ran to Manny, who scooped him up with a broad smile. The judge, a stern-looking woman with decades of experience in family court, watched this interaction with careful attention. When she called the hearing to order, the first words out of her mouth were not what anyone expected. "Before we begin, I want to be absolutely clear that celebrity status holds no special privilege in my courtroom. My only concern is the welfare of this child." Their lawyer presented their petition to become Miguel's foster parents with the intention to adopt if reunification with his birth family proved impossible. The judge asked pointed questions about their ability to provide stability given Manny's career and their time split between the Philippines and the United States. She wanted to know about their plans for Miguel's education, healthcare, and cultural identity. Most importantly, she needed to be convinced that their interest wasn't fleeting, that they understood the lifelong commitment they were seeking to make. Throughout it all, Miguel remained remarkably calm, playing quietly with toys brought by Gloria, occasionally looking up at Manny and Jinky as if to check that they were still there. When the judge finally delivered her ruling, the courtroom fell completely silent. "In my 30 years on the bench," she began, "I've seen too many children languish in the system while we search for perfect solutions that may never come. I've also seen well-intentioned adoptions fail because the parents weren't prepared for the challenges involved." She looked directly at Manny and Jinky. "What I see before me today are two people who have demonstrated not only the resources to provide for this child, but also the genuine love and commitment he deserves. While the search for his biological mother will continue, I believe it is in Miguel's best interest to be placed in your care as foster parents, with a path to adoption if reunification proves impossible." Jinky squeezed Manny's hand so hard it hurt, tears streaming down her face. The judge wasn't finished. However, she continued, "This placement comes with conditions. Indigenous American." The judge also ordered continued efforts to locate Miguel's mother, emphasizing that if she was found and deemed fit, reunification would be reconsidered. Manny and Jinky accepted every condition without hesitation. As they left the courthouse that day, Miguel riding on Manny's shoulders, they were met by camera flashes and shouted questions from reporters. Manny paused only long enough to make a brief statement. "Every child deserves safety, love, and a family. We're honored to provide those things for Miguel for as long as he needs us." Then they were whisked away in a waiting car, beginning their journey as a newly expanded family. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment for everyone involved. Miguel moved into Manny and Jinky's Las Vegas home, which they quickly childproofed and filled with toys, books, and everything a toddler could need. Their own children joined them for an extended visit, eager to meet their new foster brother. The oldest took on the role of protective sibling immediately, while the younger ones were simply delighted to have a new playmate. Miguel, for his part, blossomed in their care. The quiet, cautious toddler who had been found by the highway gradually transformed into a laughing, curious child who followed Manny around like a shadow. There were challenges, of course, nightmares that left Miguel screaming for someone called Mama Alina, tantrums triggered by seemingly innocent situations, and the constant background worry about his biological mother's safety and whereabouts. Manny adjusted his training schedule to allow more time at home, sometimes even bringing Miguel to the gym where the toddler would watch wide-eyed as his foster father worked out. The boxing community rallied around them, with fellow fighters and trainers often stopping by with gifts for the newest member of the Pacquiao family. Jinky threw herself into learning everything she could about adoption, trauma in young children, and Mexican culture. They hired a Spanish-speaking nanny to help ensure Miguel wouldn't lose his first language, and their home became a blend of Filipino, American, and Mexican influences. The media attention eventually died down, though occasional updates on Pacquiao's rescued son would appear in sports news and human interest stories. Through it all, Manny and Jinky remained focused on what mattered most, helping Miguel feel secure, loved, and at home. The search for Miguel's mother continued, but leads were scarce. The police had exhausted most conventional avenues of investigation, and while the case remained open, it was no longer active. Then, nearly 6 months after Miguel had come into their lives, there was an unexpected breakthrough. A woman had been admitted to a hospital in San Diego with severe injuries consistent with domestic violence. During her treatment, she had become distraught, repeatedly asking about a child named Miguel. A nurse who had seen the news stories made the connection and contacted authorities. Preliminary investigations suggested she might indeed be Elena Suarez, Miguel's mother. DNA testing was ordered, and Manny and Jinky received a call from Diane with the news. Their hearts were in turmoil, joy that Miguel's mother had been found alive, fear about what this might mean for their family, and deep concern for the woman who had suffered so much. The DNA results confirmed that the woman was indeed Miguel's biological mother. Elena Suarez was 24 years old, undocumented, and had been living in fear of Miguel's father, a man with ties to a dangerous drug cartel who had threatened to kill them both if she ever tried to leave him. In her desperation, she had seen abandonment as Miguel's only chance at survival. The authorities in San Diego were building a case against the father, but Elena remained terrified, convinced he would find her and carry out his threats. When she learned that Miguel was safe with the Pacquiao family, she had broken down in tears of relief and gratitude. Now, Manny and Jinky faced what might be the most difficult decision of their journey so far. Should they take Miguel to see his mother, and what would happen after that meeting? After consulting with child psychologists and their legal team, Manny and Jinky decided to take Miguel to San Diego. The meeting was arranged in a secure location, with counselors present to support both Miguel and Elena. When the day arrived, they dressed Miguel in his favorite outfit and explained, as best they could to a child not yet 3 years old, that he was going to meet someone special. The drive to San Diego was quiet, each adult lost in their own thoughts. Miguel, sensing the serious mood, was unusually subdued, clutching a stuffed animal Jinky had given him on his first night with them. At the meeting location, they were shown to a comfortable room designed to feel like a living room rather than an institutional space. And then, after months of uncertainty, the door opened, and Elena Suarez walked in. Her face was still marked with healing bruises, but her eyes lit up the moment she saw her son. Miguel, she whispered, her voice breaking. Mi corazón? Then, slowly, recognition dawned on his small face. Mama, he said uncertainly. Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face, and opened her arms. Miguel looked back at Manny and Jinky, as if seeking permission. Jinky, her own eyes wet with tears, nodded encouragingly. The toddler took a hesitant step toward his mother, then another, and finally ran into her embrace. Elena sank to her knees, holding her son close, whispering to him in rapid Spanish. Manny felt his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. This was right, this reunion was necessary and beautiful, but it also meant that the child, who had become such an important part of their family, might soon leave them. He felt Jinky's hand slip into his, squeezing tightly, silently communicating that she was experiencing the same complex emotions. The meeting lasted several hours, during which Miguel gradually relaxed and began to play and interact with his mother as memories resurfaced. Elena spoke with Manny and Jinky, expressing profound gratitude for their care of her son. I prayed every day that he would find good people, she told them, her English heavily accented but clear. God answered with the best people. She explained more about their situation, about the years of abuse she had endured, and about her final desperate plan to save Miguel from the same fate. What she said next, however, surprised them. I cannot take him back yet, she admitted, pain evident in her voice. His father is still free, still looking for us. And I have nothing, no home, no money, no papers. She looked at them with pleading eyes. Can you keep him safe a little longer? Until I can make a life for us. The question hung in the air, complex in its implications for all of them. On the drive back to Las Vegas, Miguel fell asleep in his car seat, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. Manny and Jinky spoke in hushed tones about what Elena had proposed, a temporary continuation of their care for Miguel while she worked with immigration authorities who had offered her a potential path to legal status in exchange for testimony against her abuser and got back on her feet. It wasn't a permanent goodbye to the child they had come to love, but it wasn't the adoption they had been working toward either. It was something in between, messy, complicated, and with no guarantees about the future. What do you think we should do? Jinky asked finally. Manny was quiet for a long moment, watching the desert landscape pass by outside the window. I think, he said slowly, that love isn't about possession. It's about wanting what's best for someone, even when it's hard. Jinky nodded, tears in her eyes. And a mother and child belong together, she whispered. If we can help make that possible. Manny and Jinky helped her find an apartment not far from their home and connected her with resources for domestic violence survivors. Miguel remained in their primary care, but Alina visited regularly, gradually increasing the time she spent with her son as both of them healed and reconnected. It was an unconventional arrangement that raised eyebrows in some circles, but to those involved, it felt right, a chosen family forming around a child who needed all the love he could get. Alina found work, began English classes, and slowly built a new life free from fear. Miguel thrived with the stability of his relationship with the Pacquiaos combined with the growing bond with his mother, and Manny and Jinky discovered that their hearts were big enough to not only love Miguel, but also to welcome Alina into their circle of care. The case against Miguel's father moved forward, with Alina bravely testifying despite her ongoing fear. Her testimony, along with evidence gathered by law enforcement in multiple jurisdictions, eventually led to his arrest and prosecution, not only for domestic violence, but also for drug trafficking and other serious charges. The day the verdict came in, guilty on all counts, with a sentence that would keep him in prison for decades, was the day everything changed again. Alina called Manny and Jinky, her voice trembling with emotion. "We are free," she said simply. Truly free. The implications were clear. With the threat removed, Alina was ready to take the next step in rebuilding her life with her son. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult Manny had ever had, but also one of the most important. They talked about Miguel's future, about what transition would look like, and about how they could remain in his life even as his mother took on her rightful role. There were tears, but there was also a deep understanding that they were making the right choice for the child they all loved. Miguel's transition to living primarily with Alina took place gradually over several months. The psychologists emphasized the importance of consistency and clear communication to help him understand the changes. Manny and Jinky converted their role from foster parents to something more like honorary aunt and uncle, still deeply involved, but supporting Alina's position as Miguel's mother. They helped Alina furnish her new apartment, which she had been able to afford thanks to a steady job and smart financial management. They established regular visits and family dinners, creating new traditions that honored their unique situation. On the day Miguel officially moved in with Alina full-time, they had a small celebration, not a goodbye, but a recognition of a new chapter. Miguel, now almost 4 years old, and much more verbal than the toddler Manny had found by the highway, seemed to understand the significance in his own way. "I have big family," he declared proudly, holding both Alina's and Jinky's hands. "Very big family." They agreed to a single in-depth interview with a respected journalist, hoping to raise awareness about domestic violence, the challenges faced by immigrants in abusive relationships, and the importance of both the child welfare system and supportive community networks. The resulting article painted a picture not of celebrities doing charity, but of human beings forming connections that transcended conventional family boundaries. "Some people have asked why we didn't fight harder to adopt Miguel permanently," Manny explained in the interview. "But that misses the point entirely. Our goal was never to have him, it was to love him and do what was best for him. And sometimes, love means helping a mother and child find their way back to each other." Alina, sitting beside him, added her perspective. "They did not just save my son that day on the highway, they saved both of us." Miguel is now in school, a bright, bilingual child who splits his time between his mother's home and regular visits with the Pacquiaos, who he calls his Tito Manny and Tita Jinky. Alina has obtained permanent residency and runs a small but successful catering business specializing in Mexican cuisine. Manny and Jinky have maintained their close relationship with both of them, creating a blended family that defies easy categorization but functions with love and mutual respect. Manny's boxing career has evolved, with more focus on his philanthropic work, including a foundation specifically dedicated to helping children and families affected by domestic violence. When asked about the impact Miguel had on his life, Manny's answer is simple. "I thought I was rescuing a child that day, but the truth is, that child helped rescue something in me, a reminder of what really matters in this life." Alina has become an advocate for domestic violence survivors, particularly within immigrant communities, sharing her story to help others find the courage to seek safety. The unique co-parenting arrangement they developed has been studied by family therapists as a model for putting a child's needs above adult ego and ownership. And Miguel himself seems to understand, in the way children often grasp emotional truths beyond their years, the special nature of his family. During a recent school assignment to draw his family tree, he created an elaborate diagram that included not only his mother and the Pacquiaos, but also their children, extended family members, and even Gloria, his first foster mother. When his teacher asked about the unusual arrangement, Miguel shrugged and replied with the simple wisdom of childhood. "My tree has lots of branches because I was lucky twice, first to be found, and then to have everyone stay." A few minutes earlier, or later, a different route home from training. A distracted moment behind the wheel. Any small change might have meant Miguel's story ended very differently. It's a thought that still gives him chills. But equally powerful is his recognition of how that split-second decision to pull over changed not just one life, but many. In interviews, he's occasionally asked if he considers himself a hero for what he did. His answer never varies. The real heroes are the child welfare workers, the foster parents, and especially Elena, who found the courage to start over for her son's sake. I was just in the right place at the right time, and fortunate enough to be able to help. This humility, this recognition that even a small action at the right moment can have profound consequences, has become central to how Manny approaches his life and legacy. The story of Miguel, now shared with permission from all involved, has inspired others to become foster parents, to volunteer with child welfare organizations, or to take a stand against domestic violence. It has also sparked important conversations about immigration policy, family preservation, and the many forms that family can take in today's world. Manny and Jinky have used their platform to advocate for reforms that would better support vulnerable children and families, drawing on their first-hand experience with both the strengths and weaknesses of the current system. Their relationship with Elena and Miguel has evolved into a powerful testament to what becomes possible when people choose cooperation over conflict, and the welfare of a child over personal gain. We didn't know how it would all turn out when we started this journey, Jinky reflected recently. We just knew we had to try, to do what seemed right one step at a time. He has inherited his mother's resilience and determination, along with a sense of justice and generosity that those who know him attribute partly to Manny's influence. He excels at sports, particularly boxing, which Manny teaches him not as a future career but as a way to build discipline and confidence. More importantly, he is secure in the knowledge that he is deeply loved by an entire network of people who came into his life through extraordinary circumstances. When asked what he wants to be when he grows up, his answers vary from professional athlete to chef to firefighter. But one ambition remains constant. I want to help people who need help, he says, like everyone helped me and my mom. It's a simple statement, but one that encompasses the essence of this remarkable story, how rescue can come in many forms, and how being found is sometimes just the beginning.